Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. Hi, my name is Chris Ortega, CEO of Fresh FP&A, and I got two distinct guests with me. So excited. Introduce yourself to the audience.
All right, well, thanks, Chris. David Peerless, Managing Director at Accenture, responsible for our BTP and innovation.
So hey, Chris. Hey, David. Thanks for having me. Tom Chelenik. I lead our solution management organization for data management, planning, and analysis.
Nice, nice. Welcome, guys. So one of the most important topics right now, one of the things that's hot right now is generative AI, right? So if you were to give kind of like that high level view of what generative AI is and some of the benefit it has, David, let's start with you.
You mean it's not how I can go write a poem to my wife to tell her how much I love her?
Yeah,
right? I mean,
that's
I know
exactly
that's the fun
it.
use
That's
cases
exactly
people
it.
are playing with, but as we think about generative AI, it's about generating content, and it's a whole new way that we've never had before to be able to do it. And the thought process, now has to turn to how do we use it for business applications? And we're starting to see that happen with use cases being formed and developed, right? As we talk about reporting, analytics, and the rest.
Yeah, no doubt. And beyond just reporting analytics for planning, being able to use generative AI in order to get, maybe more unbiased insights as it pertains to historical data to, figure out and drive more profitability and growth across the business has been a huge, use case for our SAP customers. And there's a ton of interest out there, as you said, Chris, in companies of all industries.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, right? Is everybody talks about this, and it's trying to find like what function in the company is like, where does it fit me, right? Like sure. I come from the office of the CFO, and we're typically laggers when it comes to technology, right? Like we're the last one in the game when it comes to getting tech, right? So we're still trying to find it versus some of our counterparts in the organization, like sales and marketing, where it's prevalent everywhere, right? And like I think like finding it to where it's manageable, right? Where you can take the reality and all these big picture things that you're able to see and get it down to a practical use case. So I know you both talked about that. Care to share an example of a practical use case where you see generative AI provide that significant value to the business?
Yeah, it's about, driving profitable business and also growth. And so for me, where are the revenue streams that are providing the most bang for the buck as far as opportunity per region, per product, maybe even per segment? And instead of analysis by paralysis, you can use generative AI in order to uncover some of those unforeseen influencers of revenue to steer the business forward, whether that's for FP&A, as you said, Chris, it's already happening many times as it pertains to the HR, sales and operational planning.
Thanks.
But it's no longer just a nirvana state, blue sky. Finance, the office of the CFO, they're super interested in this, and they understand in order to stay ahead of the competition, they're going to have to use generative AI, no doubt about it.
Definitely.
Well, and we've even got one, Chris, right, of how we're helping our controllers, close the books. How can we give them, feedback on what are they seeing and even recommendations on what the commentary needs to be. And how do you take that even further past the controllers to other parts of the business, even in finance, that are asking for it, that are much lower down in the food chain, but they're important that this helps them on their everyday work too. So it is something that we are seeing in finance. I know you said laggards, but I think there are parts of the businesses and parts of organizations that are trying to push ahead and be able to take advantage of some of this new capabilities and technologies that they've never had before.
Yeah, and I love that fact cakes from both of you guys, right? Because it's, I think, one of the goals of generative AI, right? There's a lot of goals in it, but to me, one of the pressing across all the functional areas, right, is get your people out of these low value activities, right? Tom, you talked about it, right? Sure. I've lived it. I know all those people going to look at this and say, they're churning and burning through this data, through this mining. That's low value, right?
It's automation and accuracy are key, and that's those are big components of generative AI that provide immediate efficiencies to companies that are, by the way, just shrinking. Like, the less people do more. That's the motto nowadays, the mantra, so to speak, and we all know the reasons why, right? The economy, the inflation, disruption, supply chain problems. There's unrest, et cetera, et cetera. So it's now more than anything, do more with less, and with generative AI, you can really automate a bunch of non-valued activities, especially as it pertains to the FP&A, and also drive more accuracy. I mean, at the end, not having an accurate forecast rather could be the difference between winning and losing in this highly competitive environment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
To your point, it's about working smarter, not harder at
Totally.
the end of the day. That to me is the key point of how you can just go use it.
Sure.
There are, I know the worry out there is, well, hey, my information, my privacy, the rest, but there are ways to start using the models and the rest that exist in a way that doesn't compromise your information.
Yeah.
And you can still do it to work smarter and do work in a very seamless and different manner than you've done in the past.
Exactly.
And then what's also interesting is another fact is that one of the 5 key areas for FP&A specifically is a data scientist. That's a role, that's a group, and these people are specific, working with their business partners to fully understand and be able to use some of these highly complex algorithms, generative AI, components in order to derive some of these values and be more prescriptive, accurate, and automated, as I said. So we're not lagging for the type of workforce and folks that can actually help out with the finance team in there. It's actually one of the key ingredients, and I know this through talking to multiple FP&A professionals.
Yeah, and to me, it's like it's that role of being able to complement the office of the CFO, right?
Yeah.
Like I've grown high growth finance organization and high growth businesses, right? And you talked about it, right? Revenue could be growing triple digits year over year. I never got headcount. They never came to me and said, "Hey, Chris, you can go hire 3 more financial analysts, right?"
It's true.
Sales got all the headcount, right?
course.
Sales operations got it, right?
course, yeah.
But this is a way that we scale. Right? This is how you scale with the Tom, you mentioned
and get time back as well, time back. FP&A finance, the least kept secret in the world, they work hard. They work hard. Hard. And
we're the silent soldiers in the
it's
company.
true. They really are, and they don't get a lot of love for it, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's giving some time back. So help with work life, keep them motivated, keep them into it, and think about this younger generation. They don't want to just be using VLOOKUPs and Excel, but it's a way to intrigue young professionals to join FP&A and freshen it up, so to speak, right, and make it more modern. So, yeah.
One other thing you talked about, Tom, and Dave, I want to get your insights around this, the partnership element that we have inside the business, right? Like we partner with sales. You got to partner across the enterprise, right? How have you seen generative AI being that great way of like sales, marketing, maybe HR, operations, finance, all these functional areas coming together? Where have you seen that be successful?
It's with the organizations that are sharing their information or their data. The key piece is if your data's not in the same place, you don't have easy access to it, it's not going to work. And let's be honest, Chris. You and I both, I know, are Indiana grads, which we figured we'd work in at Tom's chagrin. But if you look at what majors are going to be important, like English is right back up there of how do I go and ask the appropriate questions in the right manner to get the answers. So if you talk about right across the organization, you've got to be able to go and address what you're looking for so you get the answers you want back. So my least favorite topic is now becoming probably one of the more important topics as we move forward of how do I go interact with it and how do I ask the right questions?
Yeah, part of being a good business partner with finance is understanding exactly the KPIs and what the other areas of the business are working towards, right? What's important to them, et cetera, et cetera. And again, generative AI could be a big part of that evolution to even help them assist to further understand that. So everyone's driving to an aligned plan amongst other things, key KPIs to drive profitability and growth, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that partnership side of it, when you're able to bring the business in that conversation, right? And you're able to get that diversity of viewpoints and insights, right?
Sure.
I think, Dave, you talked about one of the most important things any business partner has to do, you have to speak the business language, right? Yep. Too many times in functional areas, right? Finance, right? CFOs, we come in, we speak our US GAAP, our IFRS, and the business is over there like, meow, meow, we lose them, right? Sure. And now with a tool like this, you can speak that same language, right? You can get to that commonality where it's just like straight to insights, right? Yep. You're not having to go through and go through all this data, mine it, find the fact, and then you wasted all this time, right?
Which takes weeks, if not months, by the way.
Which takes weeks and months, right? So and
it's irrelevant by the time you find it.
Exactly, you find it and it's not actionable, it's more of an insight, right? You're just like, I just told you something, and you're sitting there like, what am I gonna do with this? How's this gonna have value, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you're questioning why it's wrong.
Yeah.
Or why isn't it accurate? And then you're spending time on the past, not looking at the present to figure out what can I do, what can I plan for, what can I think about now?
Of course.
To get ahead.
Which I think is one of that new role of the CFO, right? I think one of the things, and I talk about this a lot, is there's two different hats CFOs of the future need to have, right? The first one is we need to take off that financial hat. Not saying it's not important, right? But we need to put on that feelings officer hat, right? We need to tap into the feelings of the business, feelings of the people. But more so importantly, we need to be that future officer, right? We need to be thinking about the future, because at the end of the day, right, I may be biased, but there's no functional element inside the organization that has the touch points that finance does.
True.
Everything stops and starts with us.
Totally.
It's going to end at finance in some way.
Yep.
And when we're able to be part of that vision casting, and less about, hey, we said we had a budget of 10 widgets and we did 8 widgets.
Right.
Nobody cares about that.
True.
Right?
Yep.
What are we going to do about it?
Right.
Right? That's where I think generative AI can really
that's
have
a
an
great
opportunity.
Point. You're absolutely right. No doubt. Understanding where everyone's head's at, the culture, if everyone's feeling good about where the business is steering, stuff of that nature. That not all CFOs have to embrace that type of power, so to speak, for lack of a better word, but it's right there in front of you. You can, and you could steer the business, the entire business, not just the finance function, into the right direction, and just create a well-versed, highly dynamic team using generative AI for sure. Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Well, and think of the data that you could have at your fingertips, right?
Yeah,
not only do you have your financial information, but what if you could start getting the sentiment information not only from your employees, but from your consumers or the outside that are doing your customers, to start seeing and understanding, if you ask questions, how are things happening and what are the assumptions, or what can I go and assume will happen?
Yep.
And I think that's some of the powerful pieces of, you don't have to go train it nearly as much as you did in the past, but you can go ask questions and start trying to figure out what are those results, what are the expectations in those what if moments that you can be thinking and not having the time previously to do.
And we're talking about all this incredible insights and data, market data, consumer data, customer data. What do we need to do with it, David, right? We need to create a harmonized layer for it to be insightful and something that can be easily obtainable to actually take action on, because even with all of these great insights, if they're all over the place in Excel workbooks and there's no level of, it's going to become insignificant by the time you mine all the data and get any type of impactful data. So
and it's got to mean the same, right?
It does.
We've talked about that too, right?
Yep,
If it doesn't mean the same,
then
you can make one assumption on it, I make another, and Chris makes a third, and look at that, we have 3 opinions that are all probably incorrect.
3 biased opinions, which is what we're trying to avoid, by the way.
Right.
For the most part.
Yeah, and I think one of the other use cases of generative AI, right, is like, I get this question asked a lot, and I'm curious to know both your thoughts on this, right, is like, this is a high level topic, right, and this the elephant in the room, we got to say it, right, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, like, is AI going to take my job? Right? Like, you get that a lot, particularly in a finance organization, right? Or other parts of the organization. You'll see that. Is that gonna make me obsolete? And my opinion always around it has been, it is meant to upskill us.
Totally.
Right? It's meant to put us in the high value activities, whether you're in sales, whether you're in operations, whether you're in HR, right? It's meant to complement the core skill sets that we need in the future: collaboration, communication, connection, bringing clarity, right?
Totally.
Building a community. That is high value, right? And that's what the business demands out of business partners now, right? So I'm curious to you, if you got that question, right? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
So, I mean, my answer would be it's human plus, right? Machine, if you want to say that, or human plus Gen AI. It's going to complement the work. So if I can take out work that is non-value added and it makes my life easier so I can focus on more value added tasks, it allows me to free up time to think about what I'm doing and focus on the analysis versus creating the reports or the analysis that I need. It's going to empower me to do work in a very different manner. It's not going to go take away what I have to do on a daily basis. It's going to go help me be more efficient and more productive at the end of the day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You're spot on. Look, it's complementary, right? Nothing beats business acumen. Business acumen is not going away. Period. Stop. And so it's another means to provide value. You move away from non-value activity, no doubt about it. Automate things that we've been trying to automate across all of finance, beyond just FP&A for a long, long time, and other lines of businesses. But yeah, I don't see it taking, being the be-all, end-all to take any jobs away. It's going to be complementary and help to be more efficient at the end of the day. More accurate and more efficient. That's what it should be doing.
Yeah, those are the drivers.
That's it. Those are the two biggest drivers. And who doesn't want to be more accurate and more efficient?
Right,
Again, time back, work-life balance, all these things, they're important to us.
It's not Skynet. Right. So if I go, all right, I have to throw a little humor in, but it's not Skynet or Terminator.
Well, I don't know. We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
At the moment.
And I think like another perspective is like I never looked at it, and I don't think we'll get to a point in business where we're freely letting AI make decisions, right? Like freely, just like no governance, no looking at it, no checking it out, right? You're shaking your head, but I think like that. When we talk about forecasting or we talk about budgeting, right? There's no way you'll just let your AI algorithm. But again, I've always looked at
lifetime.
it. Yeah, not mine either. I don't know what companies are using like forecasting and not checking it, their algorithms, right?
Yeah.
But I think it gets us to a point where we're able to do a great gold standard of A/B testing, right? You can have that machine-produced algorithm, that prescriptive, that predictive forecast, right? Complement that with your deep business acumen, people that have been in the trenches, got that acumen, got that partnership, got those processes optimized, you got the right people in the right seat. Now you've got the A/B testing that you can now give to the business, right? That's the gold standard what we want to do.
And here's the key, you just kind of hit it, but at the end, even though it's going to generate a lot of great data for which you can use, there's always going to be outliers, anomalies, and influencers that you have to, take into account. Otherwise, what you're projecting, whether it's revenue or expenses or others, could be out of whack completely. And for the most part, you need human intervention and business process expertise, not just in finance, but across all lines of businesses, in order to kind of have that. So that, amongst other things, are why, in my opinion, it's going to be very complementary.
And I think you're going to see in certain spots, so if we talk about something that we run today at Accenture, right, our Cash App, we let that run on its own, right? We've gotten to a level where the confidence is high enough, right, and the thresholds are at the appropriate levels where if it hits a certain point, then yes, a person is involved to go look at it. But if it hits the certain targets that we're expecting, we let it automatically go. And someone can then go review the results. Do we get to a point of, hey, maybe on everything we're going to let it go? No, but I think there are going to be points where you're going to say, hey, I am confident in the results that I'm getting back, that I can take a step back, and then maybe I can review it at the end of the day of what was done and be like, hey, do I need to go change anything? But you're not going to go start with it. Hey, by the way, let it go run on its own. But if you can get to that point of you have that understanding, then you can remove yourself from the middle and take an action to then review the results and say, all right, is it really doing what I want? And then you can. But I think you're going to see it in pockets and parts of the organization. And finance is one of them that's going to say, hey, if I can get the comfort level in it, then yes, I will let it go with still having the right guardrails and the checks in place.
Yeah, I think compliance is a big piece of it, right? And being in finance where that compliance is so heavy, right? Usually we have a checklist of everything we have to go through to be able to do that. It does take a balance, right? And I led off the conversation earlier where when you look at this innovation spectrum, right? Typically you see a lot of the client-facing organization at the front. You got finance, you got till and back. We got to move that more towards the middle. And like where we get more comfortable with it, you talked about that as a key phrase, like comfort. The best way to get comfortable with it is using it. You got to use it, right?
Yeah, the seeing is believing, and you've got to have it. But then you've also got to have I'll say a human touch to it too. Right? We've talked a little bit about HR, but if you scan someone's resume and you say, and you're going to say, no, I don't think you're a fit for the job, you probably don't want to send out an email to that person being like, hey, thank you for submitting your resume. you're not a fit 2 minutes after they submitted the resume, right? I mean, there's a little bit of like a touch. You know, you got to think of the human interaction to realize, like, hey, I need a pause and say maybe I'll send it out 48 hours later or something else, so you have a feel and you make sure that the responses you're giving back also take into account people's real feelings too.
Definitely.
Yeah, what a great example.
Definitely.
Cool.
One other question I have is, like, you know, in concluding, like looking at, we put it in our crystal ball. So let's look at the future of generative AI in the next 5 to 7 years, right? So come with me. We're going to go on this journey together, right? When you look at that, right now where we're at, if you were to forecast, look in that crystal ball, right? What does that look like for this office of the CEO, for the CFO, 5 to 7 years from now with generative AI?
That's you. I'll let you.
Oh
start
man,
on
I was
that
going to say, I was hoping you were going a different place so I could say Indiana wins the championship.
Yeah. And we beat UConn. And we beat UConn.
There you go.
We beat UConn in it. Yeah.
So, but if I have to go look 5 to 7 years, it's going to be that the information from the organization is going to be available that you can go ask a question across. And if I'm the CEO, I'm going to get the answer back because my information is so readily available to me that I can go ask, and I have confidence in what I'm going to go get back. And it's secure that I can go ask if I have the ability to go do it. And then others in the organization that maybe don't have the same access can still ask the questions in a way that gives them the answers that they want to.
I think that's pretty amazing. I see that as being something maybe a little further than 5 to 7 years.
Hey, we got to strive. We got to push ourselves, right?
But that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think for me, it gets to a point where, and I'll share a story. Like when you know, I'm staying at the Hilton, and you go to your hotel room, and you can just get any movie, you can find it, you can instantly consume data, right? I look at a vision where generative AI is being able to provide that across the business right now. Right now, it's like you have to feed it. Like it needs to be fed.
Sure.
You need to nurture it right. David, you talked about it where you got to have the right prompts. If you don't have the right prompts, it says, I'm a language model, I can't do this, right? We all get those errors, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I see it to a point where a lot of that back-end insight that you had humans and people doing, it's serving the business, right? Yeah. It's looking over to say, hey, your pipeline is less than, you know, what you need in your quarterly forecast. So at risk is going to be more of that prescriptive and predictive side of it, right? That to me is really the value across it, is like when it can start being proactive in giving me insights, and I don't like the person, the salesperson, the HR person, the people ops person, the CFO, they don't have to have that idea inception and then engage. That idea inception starts with generative AI, where it's feeding you recommendation around your pipeline, or it's feeding you recommendations around your recruiting efforts and when you need to start based on your hiring, right? It's feeding you insights, and it's actually running scenarios to say, hey, if you choose this fact pattern, here's what it'll look like. Right?
And you're seeing it today. I mean, you can go out and search, right? People that are putting in, hey, write the code, test the code, fix the code, deploy the code, right? Is right a basic example. And there are people that are trying to push the boundaries of what it is. So I mean, it goes exactly to that example you're given.
Yeah, and that 360 view that you mentioned, Chris, that Nirvana state, because it's definitely Nirvana state. Awesome. Because
it sounds good, right?
You know,
it sounds good, right, Tom?
In order for this to work, finance and all the actual different lines of business need to communicate more and collaborate more, which
I'm confident is going to happen. Maybe not 5 to 7 years, but
but you know, if that can happen, then of course that 360 kind of prescriptive, this is where you need to go holistically instead of you and you and you and you, that would be awesome. And definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I think moving fast, like there's always a quote I always like lead teams with, and it's like, if you want to move fast, move alone. If you want to move further, move together.
Love it.
Right? And how we can incorporate people, the human aspect of it, with people, with technology, get our seat at the table, have that cohesive, comprehensive view, and leveraging technology to be able to do that and provide that value to the business. That's where we change the game.
Love it.
Thank you guys so much for this conversation. Really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and catch us on the next one. Thank you.